Hi guys, it's Ameriie and I'm here with my favorite books of 2016. It was kind of hard to narrow down because even though I only read about 42 or 43 books this year, a lot of them were really good. So I had to narrow down my top 10 list, which is why I have a top 10 and an honorable mention. And I'll explain why that's an honorable mention when I get to it. Let's get started. And by the way, these are in no particular order. These are completely out of order. Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor. I loved this book. The first time I tried to read this, I kind of stopped around page 30 something, I believe, because I met a new character. She was a character who wasn't in books 1 or 2, and I kind of didn't really feel like getting to meet someone new. That kind of happens. It's very tricky when you meet a new character, especially a new POV character. When you're meeting a new POV character, if you don't have any history with that person, it's hard to be invested, especially like in the middle of a series or at the end of a series. So that was kind of tricky for me. Even though I felt like I would like her, I wasn't sure if I kind of felt like taking the time to get to know her. But once I read the book, I was kind of kicking myself for not reading it sooner. It's a fantastic book. I think it ties with me for the first book, because I really loved the first book. Each book kind of has a different flavor. Book 1 is very much a romance, an introduction to the world. Is moving pretty quickly. You are very much in our world, and the other world is very magical. There's a big sense of wonder in the first book. In book 2, it's very much about war and all the psychological elements of war. You're getting more POVs that didn't happen in book 1, so that was kind of different. Book 3 felt like it was moving a little faster. All the pieces are being tied together, and you are getting more world building and more magical elements because there's so much more of the magical world involved. But then there's also a lot of our human world, and you kind of see where they connect in unexpected ways. Highly recommend this series. Loved it, and I cannot wait for Laini Taylor's new series, which begins with book 1, Strange the Dreamer, coming out in March. The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. It's a girl meets boy story. The girl is Jamaican and she finds out that her family is going to be deported tonight. The boy is Korean American, and there's a lot going on with his family, but they meet and there's a lot about fate and destiny, as well as immigration, race, class. And I love that you not only have the POVs of the main characters, but you also get glimpses into other people's POVs. They may be only for a second, but there are adult POVs. I love adult POVs in stories personally. I love that about this book. And you kind of see how everything's connected. These are like pieces of yarn, pieces of string overlapping or intersecting with one another. This book just grabbed me. I just loved it. Like everything. I read this in pretty much one sitting. For the most part, one sitting. Nicola Yoon is definitely an auto-buy author for me. Absolutely. And she's also part of the anthology that's coming out in July, so get your pre-order if you didn't already get that. Absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. Oh, and I cried at the end. I kind of like towards the end, I got teary. My version of crying is getting teary when I'm reading a book. So that happened. Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is book 2 in the Six of Crows duology. If you like fantasy, if you like fast moving plot, if you love characters, if you love ensemble pieces especially, I cannot recommend this enough. This is one of the best series I've ever read in my life. I would have included the first book too, but we only have 10 slots. Okay, we're just going to count this as one. This is the duology, book 1 and book 2. I read them both this year. This is pretty much a heist story, fantasy heist, and then the heist goes further because I mentioned earlier that this is a heist story, but there is an overarching plot. There is something else that's left undone for all the characters, but the main character, well, is there really a main character? I would say Kaz is still like the hub. He's the hub of the wheel. Where we left off on this book, we continue with this, book 2, and then of course there's ultimately that underlying thread, the thing that he has to accomplish that's taken care of in this book. Loved it, can't recommend this enough. The Dumb House by John Burnside. This is a story about a man who is obsessed with finding or discovering the secret language of human beings. So he will stop at nothing. There is no line between right and wrong, and it's basically being in the mind of maybe a sociopath, but definitely an immoral character. You're stuck in his head, and I loved every minute of it. Slade House by David Mitchell. This is a really cool book. It was very short. It was kind of like a novella, and it started out as a Twitter story that he did on Twitter. Like he basically just wrote a story, a few lines, I think a 3-week period of time, and then he extended the story into this novella that ended up being published. All of David Mitchell's books take place in one universe, and so I wanted to make sure that I read The Bone Clocks, we'll get to that in a second. I wanted to make sure I read that book before I read Slade House because I wanted to understand the world and get into it, and I wanted to catch any Easter eggs that he had in there, and he did have quite a few. I loved this one. It's about a house called the Slade House that's in the UK. People tend to disappear whenever they go to this house. There's definitely a pattern pattern. You know why they're going to this house, but you're just watching each person and what's happening in their own lives, what leads them to the house, and then you see kind of, it's almost painful to watch because it's just like you just see it happening, you see it going down, and you kind of see it happen to person after person, and you just want to warn everyone, but you can see why they're taken in by the house and by the owners. I don't want to say any more than that because it's best knowing as little as possible going into this book, and I do suggest reading The Bone Clocks if you intend on reading that first. The Vegetarian by Hong Kong. I have this here because I let my mom borrow this book. She's going to read the Korean version, the original version, and then she also wants to read the English version to compare the two and see how the translated version stacks up. I loved this book. It's very strange. It's called The Vegetarian, but it's not, I don't, yes, she becomes a vegetarian, but that's one, not the point, and two, that's not really her problem. Essentially, she is dealing with a mental illness. It's never really specified, but it's pretty clear that she has a mental illness. So one day the character takes a stand and she decides to stop eating meat. And this is met with a lot of resistance, not only from her husband, but also from her family. Resistance is to say the least, because her family actually gets really upset. You definitely get hints that this is just, especially when it comes to her father, there's a lot more to this than just anger. He probably has a lot of built-in resentment, and there's a lot of family dynamics and everything. It's just a small book. It's so slim. It's amazing how much the author packed into this small volume. It gets really strange because there's a mix of like control over our own bodies, and then sex, death, and decay. That kind of mixes up. Interestingly enough, that is also part of The Dumb House by John Burnside. What is the intersection between sex and death? Sex and death, sex and death. I mean, I guess if you think about it, sex, reproduction, the body. I highly enjoyed The Vegetarian by Hong Kong. Loved it in all its weirdness. The relationship between the sisters really touched me and actually made me feel really terrible just because you could see the heartache in their relationship, and you could see how there's so much regret there. Regret is one of the saddest emotions because there's nothing that can ever fix it. It's nothing that can be fixed. You just have to move on from it. If there is a hell, it's everyone dealing with their own regrets and facing what they've done. If you're the least bit interested, I definitely recommend giving it a chance. It won't take you a long time to read, so it won't be too much of an investment, and you could potentially fall in love with this book. The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. I love this book. It's not a slave narrative, that's not really what it is. It does follow a few characters in their quest for escape. There is an actual literal underground railroad, although it's not like huge, but there are stations, there are tracks. The story is not about what happened when these slaves were trying to escape and the horrors of slavery. It does have those things in there, but it's a lot about the psychology of America, the psychology of where America was, manifest destiny, why people felt a certain way, which is why it's so relevant to today. It really helps to explain the pervasive attitude, the whole, this is my birthright, those people are coming into our country, those people are taking away what is ours, and we need to get back to what we were, which was great, but of course is a fantasy. And that's the interesting thing about the Norman Rockwell paintings. I think it's Norman Rockwell. The Rockwell paintings, you know, the illustrations. People always look at them as if he were depicting some kind of beautiful, perfect America. But if you really look at them, they can be very dark. He was also exposing a lot of the horrors of what it was to live in this country and the attitudes of this country in this so-called glory age. When we hear everyone saying, oh, no one was listening to the white working class, they feel like they haven't been listened to, they feel abandoned. When I read a certain passage of the book, and I can't read it to you right now because my dad has it, it perfectly articulated to me the true feelings behind this sentiment, which isn't that people feel abandoned or feel left out because no one's listening to them. Some people do lose. They're losing jobs because of technology. Yes, we're moving away from coal, we're moving away from certain sources, but we also moved away from horses and carriages, okay? I mean, if people were like, look, we can't have these cars coming in because now we have these factories where we're making carriages, you know, to be pulled by horses. It's like, yeah, because technology moves on. I'm just gonna keep going on that. I'm gonna stop right here. So taking it back, yes, certain people are left behind and some communities are left behind because of the advances in technology. People are hurting, everyone's hurting, but what ends up happening when people cannot really make much headway against the wealthy, the prosperous, they end up attacking immigrants and the disenfranchised and people who are of a different race. That's just human nature. And that's very much part of the movement, why we saw the election results that we saw. And it's prominently displayed in The Underground Railroad. That's why I said that this is very much a book that's in dialogue with Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, another one of my favorites. These two books very much speak to where America is, where it was, where we're going. They are so important because they're not only very specific. This is very specific to the author's experience and what he wants to say to his son. The Underground Railroad is very specific to a certain period of time in America, the era of slavery, but they are also so universal. That's the thing that just drives me crazy about human beings. We just continue to do the same things. It's almost as if we just never learn. I think that's like the curse of humanity. I'm not going to go too long on this one because I have talked about this one at great length before in previous videos, so definitely check this out. I would highly suggest reading both Between the World and Me and The Underground Railroad back to back or close together, because you'll definitely see parallels. If you read The Underground Railroad, you'll see parallels with what's happening right now. It's what's going on every day. So highly recommend both of these books. Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. She is an auto-buy author for me. I loved this book. In this book, you're following a group of people as they make their way to the shore to catch this huge like ocean liner. It's about as big as the Titanic. And they're all trying to find safe passage, but they're very late because Hitler did not allow anyone to leave for a very long time. Finally, he relented and let the people escape. So you're dealing with German refugees and a lot of Lithuanian refugees. So we're seeing a flip side in this book regarding World War II. We are seeing the civilian Germans and other refugees, because there were so many people living in Germany. Some of them were Germans, some of them were German citizens, but they were also from Lithuania, and other countries. So we're watching them leave because they were not allowed to leave their cities. They kind of like had to hold the fort. It would kind of like show that Germany was losing. So they weren't allowed to leave for a very long time. Finally, they do leave. They catch a boat, and it's not a spoiler. You see the raft here. This boat was sunk by a German torpedo. So many people lost their lives, mostly young people. There were lots of teenagers on this boat because a lot of families could not send all of their children away. So they had to like choose. Even when they got to the shore, it was like, no, there's not enough room. Oh, it makes me just like tearful just thinking about it. I'm not gonna get teary, but it's like literally people standing there, and it's like, everyone can't go in your family, pick one. And you know, sometimes people had to choose between their children. So they would choose like the older children because they were the only ones who could really take care of themselves and figure out a way, make a path to wherever they were going. Thousands of people trying to get onto this one boat. I think it ended up carrying, I think there are estimates of 4,000 plus on this boat. It was like double, at least double the allowance. And even then people were screaming, trying to like jump onto the boat, clinging to the boat as it was pulling off. Women were screaming, and they had their babies. They were throwing their babies like they're trying to throw their babies onto the boat. Witnesses saw babies hitting the hull of the ship because the women couldn't manage to throw the babies onto the boat. It's just like horrific. It's so horrific. The things that people do to each other. You know, it's just, now that maybe I should have spaced apart the books as I was presenting them, because now I'm thinking about this, and then, you know, the Underground Railroad and Between the World and Me, and I'm thinking about the hateful rhetoric that's happening right now. It's just, I love people. That's the thing. I love people. At the same time, when you look at humanity as a whole, it can almost make you like a misanthrope, and you know, you don't want to become that. You don't want to lose hope in humanity. But it's just, I don't know why we're like this. Sorry guys, I'm not trying to be a downer. I'm looking across at the next book I'm about to explain to you, which is also can be pretty horrific, but in a different way. Books of Blood, volumes 1 through 3 by Clive Barker. This book actually took me a couple of years to read. I wanted to read some great short stories. I wanted to read short stories by writers who were like at the top of their craft when it came to short story. It's a different animal, you know, from a novel. It took me a couple of years because I was really taking my time. I was reading it kind of like as a learning experience as well, but also because the stories are so gory. They just go to such dark places. I couldn't handle more than one or two at a time. The concepts are really cool, but what I really love about Clive Barker is that he pays a lot of attention to the human experience. It's not just a horror story to be gory. They are definitely gory, don't get me wrong, but really they are about the human experience, whatever that is. He's able to really make a character a real flesh and blood person. And he's able to do this in very few pages. The stories are about 40 to 60 pages long, and by the time you're on page 5, you know who this main character is, what they think about life, what their views are on people. You are so in that character. You're sitting so much in their perspective and in the world around them. He is a writer who's just so in control of his craft. Then of course the stories are really interesting and really weird. It's like the weirdest elements you can think of. You smash them together and then this is what you get. I personally think this is like literary horror, if we must make the distinction. There's a whole battle basically regarding what is literary. I personally think literary is a genre. There is a certain style that's there. We should talk about that. I want to say I feel like it's something that addresses the human experience in a very direct way. All stories will have a story arc, a character arc. They'll all have that for the most part, but literary fiction I think brings it to the forefront where it's really dissecting it and really spending time on these themes. So that's all I'll say for now, but that could be a cool conversation we can have down the road. The Bone Clocks by David Mitchell, we match. I loved this book. This is my honorable mention. In a nutshell, this book is about a group of supernatural beings, immortals, and how they connect to the lives of various people that we meet in this book. Mainly Holly Sykes, which is the main character. We follow her from being a little girl into her later years, much later years. So basically childhood to old age. But we're not following her through her POV the entire time. As time is going on, we're jumping into different POVs of the people who are around her, and we see how they are all kind of connected. I really, really loved that. I met one of my favorite characters of all time, Crispin Hershey, in this book. I adore this curmudgeon-y author. And there was also another great POV. It wasn't his character so much as what he was going through and what he was talking about. He was a journalist who covered a lot of things in Iraq, and basically anywhere that's war-torn, he would be there. It's something that he needed to do. He was kind of obsessed with it. It was his way of feeling alive, I think, and they were just very intriguing POVs. David Mitchell is genius at writing voice. When you read his POVs, each character feels very different. You feel like you're in the head of a different person. They think differently, they speak differently. The way they see the world is completely different from the last character. The only reason why this is honorable mention and not on my favorites is because this certain element that's like right around, I think it was like right around here, we get into the POVs of one of the supernatural characters. And I wasn't really sure, for me personally, if it was really like working, because although we're finding out all this stuff with the supernatural world and all of these elements, they're kind of like laced into the POVs, and then like right in here we are in that person's POV that is immortal, which means that the story became extremely dense in this other world, which is completely fine, but it kind of felt uneven because it's still in the context of a single volume. It almost felt very plot oriented, and there was more of a blend, an even balance between plot and character throughout the entire book. And I also felt like it just wasn't as good as the other sections. But still highly recommend this book. After reading this book, and Slade House is one of my favorites of the year. David Mitchell is definitely now one of my, I pay attention every time he's putting a book out, authors, and I will be reading Cloud Atlas. But that's why this book is honorable mention and not necessarily in the top 10. But still highly recommend this, love this, and I really would love if David Mitchell would write a book all about Crispin Hershey. Or if I could read Desiccated Embryos, which is the book that Crispin Hershey writes in this story. So those are my top 10 books of 2016. I love those books. I will be coming to you soon with my most anticipated books of 2017. Oh, I forgot to put I was gonna have in this video my balloon. I have a birthday girl balloon. I'm gonna go get it. This was supposed to be in my video. I was supposed to figure out a way to put it back there. Okay, I'm just gonna hold it. So it was my birthday yesterday, so I'm still like, I have birthday weeks and birthday months. I celebrate my birthday during that time. Am I the only one who keeps these balloons? I will keep these balloons until they fall flat. So anyway, yay! Hope you enjoyed the top 10. Definitely check them out if you like. I will have a most anticipated of 2017. I guess I'll do 10 of them. I think that's a good number because there's so many cool books coming out. Don't forget to like the video. If you liked it, please share the video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!